Good evening and welcome. Tonight we're going to be flipping through and reading all the little boxes in this book about Algeria. Now, quick disclaimer. In 2011, Algeria went through massive changes in its government. It's a completely different country than it was in 2010. And guess what year this book came out? That's right, 2010. So, there are a lot of things in this book that just no longer apply. So, I think there's only one box that we'll just skip entirely because it is no longer how things are in Algeria. But the rest of the book is mostly about geography, history, and culture, so we'll read all those. Just real quick, every time I just glimpse this book cover, it looks like Terrence Howard, and then I blink and I'm like, that's not Terrence Howard. But just like out of the corner of my eye, I'm like, Terrence Howard, what are you doing? Anyway, moving on. Some sweet little faces there. Even more sweet faces. Look at these smiles, how sweet. We've got big, beautiful Algiers up here. The big capital city. We'll see. I think there's more pictures of this monument here in the book. We'll look at those. This is the Tassili Plateau. Tassili, not sure. Lots of beautiful ancient rock art there. But first we're going to read about the world's largest desert. The Sahara is the largest non-polar or hot desert in the world, spanning the continent from the Atlantic Ocean to the Red Sea. It extends north from the Niger River and Lake Chad to the Atlas Mountains and the Mediterranean Sea. The name Sahara is derived from the Arabic word for desert. It's the desert. The grasslands of West Africa, which from the Sahara's southern boundary are called the Sahel. The grasslands are called the Sahel. The name is derived from the Arabic word sahil, which means coast. The idea is that the Sahel is the coast to the great sea of the Sahara. This also explains why the camel is often referred to as the ship of the desert. The Sahara covers about 3,500,000 square miles. Morocco, Algeria, Tunisia, Mali, Niger, Chad, and Sudan have large desert regions. Most of Libya, Egypt, and Mauritania are located in the Sahara. The folded rocks of the Saharan Atlas Mountains delineate the northern boundary of the Algerian Sahara. These mountains once supported extensive Atlas cedar forests, but most trees were harvested for fuel and building supplies. Now the denuded mountains serve mainly as a gateway to the world's largest desert. To the south, the Sahara dashes the image many have of deserts as simply an endless expanse of golden sand. The sand gives way to plateaus of black pebbles. These in turn give way to wide expanses of red sand. Farther southeast are large sandstone rock formations, which signal the beginning of the Ahaggar Mountains. Here towers Mount Tahat, sometimes with snow on its peak. Oases are the only areas of greenery in the Sahara, and they look unusually built up in the midst of the arid desert. About 1.5 million Algerians, mostly nomads and Bedouin, live in the desert. Most settle on oases and survive by growing dates and citrus fruits. Some nomads can be found traveling from pasture to pasture with their camels and other livestock. As major oil fields are located in the northeastern Sahara, one can find derricks and rigs pumping out the oil and natural gas that lie beneath the desert. The northern Sahara gets about 4 to 8 inches of rainfall a year in winter. During summer, when wet monsoon winds from the Gulf of Guinea penetrate inland to the Sahel, the northern Sahara can receive about 10 to 20 inches of annual rainfall. Most of the Sahara, however, receives less than 5 inches of rainfall annually, and large areas are known to experience no rainfall for years at a time. Thus, rainfall is distributed unevenly with huge irregularities. The Sahara experiences average temperature ranges from 14 to 93 degrees Fahrenheit, though it can reach a high of 120 degrees Fahrenheit. That's 49 degrees Celsius. There are daily fluctuations of more than 80 degrees Fahrenheit. When temperatures soar and skies are clear, humidity can go down to a low of 25%, the lowest in the world. However, the Sahara's relative humidity is often 4 to 5%. Parts of the Sahara experience 50 to 75 days per year of wind and blowing sand. Although the climate has remained relatively uniform, extended periods of drought are common. The Sahel has persistently been hit by droughts in the 1960s, the mid-1980s, and the early 1990s. The Sahara has an extensive network of dry stream beds, or wadis, that were formed during earlier wet periods. Many streams appear in the wadis after rainfall, flowing from the Atlas Mountains and the central Saharan uplands into surrounding basins, where occasional salt marshes called subkas are found. Underground sources of water that can support irrigated agriculture are found in many wadis and depressions. The sands of the Sahara hide a wealth of mineral resources. The desert has substantial crude petroleum reserves. Libya and Algeria are the largest oil producers, and Algeria is also an important producer and exporter of natural gas. In addition, Algeria has iron ore deposits and manganese, and numerous metals are found in the central Saharan uplands. Truck convoys have mostly replaced the traditional camel caravans that used to traverse the deserts, an image popularized by movies such as Lawrence of Arabia. The Saharan road system is steadily expanding. Algeria completed its most extensive trans-Saharan highway project in 1985. The highway crosses the desert from central Algeria to Niger and southern Mali. So far, only Algeria and Libya have roads spanning the Sahara. The best road and rail transportation is associated with mineral exploitation. Many international air routes cross the Sahara. And here's a picture of what I think most people imagine when they think of the Sahara Desert. Just rolling beautiful sand dunes. Next, let's read about the Barbary Ape. The Barbary Ape, so called since ancient times, is actually a monkey, not an ape. It is a macaque. Macaquea sylvanus. The Barbary ape is 15 to 30 inches tall and weighs up to 28 pounds. It reaches maturity at 3 to 4 years of age and may live for 20 years or more. With thick yellowish brown to black fur and hairless whitish pink faces, Barbary apes are the only wild monkeys now living in Europe. They occupy caves on the Rock of Gibraltar as well as in the rocky areas of Morocco and Algeria. It is thought that Arabs may have taken them westward during the Arab expansion of the Middle Ages. According to legend, British dominion will end when the Barbary ape, a symbol of British sovereignty, is gone from the British-held Rock of Gibraltar. interesting. I've never heard that. Kind of like the ravens at the Tower of London, huh? Let's look at another important animal, the camel. Domesticated thousands of years ago by frankincense traders who trained the gangly cud chewer to make the long and arduous journey from southern Arabia to the northern regions of the Middle East, the camel went on to become the Bedouins or desert dwellers' primary source of transport, shade, milk, meat, wool, and hide. But in technologically advanced Saudi Arabia, even the Bedouin are not as dependent on the camel as they once were. These days, camels are valued more as thoroughbred racing animals and sentimental images of the past than as the mainstay of transportation. But in many parts of Africa and Asia, camels still pull plows, turn water wheels, and transport people and goods to market along desert routes impassable by wheeled vehicles. The following is an introduction to the amazing creature, Ata'Allah, or God's gift, the Bedouin name for Camelus dromedarius, the one-hump dromedary, also known as the Arabian camel. Behavior. Unpredictable at best, camels have the reputation of being bad-tempered and obstinate creatures that spit and kick. In reality, they tend to be good-tempered, patient, and intelligent. The moaning and bawling sounds they make when they are loaded up and rising to their feet is like the grunting and heavy breathing of a weightlifter in action, not a sign of displeasure at having to do some work. Body temperature. Camels do not pant and they sweat minimally. Humans perspire when the outside temperature rises above the normal body temperature of 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit, but the camel has a unique body thermostat. It can raise its body temperature tolerance level as much as 8 degrees Fahrenheit before perspiring, thereby conserving body fluids and avoiding unnecessary water loss. No other mammal can do this. Because the camel's body temperature is often lower than air temperature, a group of resting camels will avoid excessive heat by pressing against each other. Ears. A camel's hearing is acute, even if it chooses to pay no attention when given a command. A camel's ears are lined with fur to filter out sand and dust blowing into the ear canal. Eyes. A camel's eyes are large with a soft, doe-like expression. They are protected by a double row of long curly eyelashes that also help keep out sand and dust, while thick bushy eyebrows shield their eyes from the desert sun. Feet. Camels have 2 toes on each foot with broad, flat, leathery pads underneath. When the camel places its foot down, the pads spread, preventing the foot from sinking into the sand. When walking, the camel moves both feet on one side of its body, then both feet on the other. This gait suggests the rolling motion of a boat, another explanation for the camel's ship of the desert nickname. Food. A camel can go for 5 to 7 days with little or no food and water, and it can lose a quarter of its body weight without impairing its normal functions. Domesticated camels rely on man for their preferred diet of dates, grass, and grains such as wheat and oats. But they can also survive on thorny scrub or whatever else they can find. Bones, seeds, dried leaves, even their owner's tent. Hair. Camels come in every shade of brown, from cream to almost black. All camels molt in spring and grow a new coat by autumn. Camel hair is sought after worldwide for high-quality coats, other garments, and artists' brushes, as well as to make traditional Bedouin rugs and tents. A camel can shed as much as 5 pounds of hair at each molt. Hump. Contrary to popular belief, a camel does not store water in its hump. The hump is a mound of fatty tissue from which the animal draws energy when food is hard to find. When a camel uses its hump fat for sustenance, the mound becomes flabby and shrinks. If a camel draws too much fat, the small remaining hump will flop from its upright position and hang down the camel's side. Food and a few days' rest will return the hump to its normal firm condition. Lifespan. After a gestation period of 13 months, a camel cow usually bears a single calf and occasionally twins. Calves walk within hours of birth but remain close to their mothers until they reach maturity at 5 years of age. The normal lifespan of a camel is 40 years, although a working camel retires from active duty at 25. Water. Although camels can withstand severe dehydration, a large one can drink as much as 28 gallons in 10 minutes. Such an amount would kill another mammal, but the camel's unique metabolism enables the animal to store the water in its bloodstream. That's interesting. Here we can see the Bay of Algiers. There's some big old ships there in the harbor. Here we go, the Martyrs' Monument. Really, really beautiful. Let's read about Tassili Najjer. Tassili Najjer, a plateau in the Saharan area of southern Algeria, is where French soldier Lieutenant Brennans discovered a large group of prehistoric rock paintings during a canyon operation in 1933. His discovery attracted the attention of French archaeologist Henri Lot, who followed Brennans to examine the paintings. He then brought a team of painters and photographers to the plateau in 1956 to copy and record the discovery. The paintings in Tassili Najjer's rock shelters and caves are about 8,000 years old, dating back to a time when hunter-gatherers and pastoralists flourished in a Sahara that enjoyed a much higher level of rainfall. Painted over a period dating from 6000 BCE to the first centuries of the present era, they are the most complete existing record of a prehistoric African culture and among the most remarkable Stone Age remains to be found anywhere. In a wide variety of styles ranging from naturalistic to abstract, the rock paintings depict the wild Saharan fauna and herds of domestic cattle and sheep. The inhabitants of the cave used a distinctive type of pottery known as dotted wavy line, as well as ground and polished stone axes and adzes. Although they cultivated cereal crops, they also relied on hunting, gathering, and fishing in shallow lakes for much of their diet. The culture depicted in the rock paintings flourished until the region began to dry up as a result of climatic changes after 4000 BCE. But the prehistoric savanna has been described as the nursery for subsequent African civilization. The Tassili art is important for the light it throws on prehistoric migrations and economic practices in the Saharan savanna. Let's see, some ancient Roman ruins here. Really big old columns. Let's read about Timgad. The ruins of Timgad, which was ancient Mugadi in northeastern Algeria, about 220 miles southeast of Algiers, are the most complete of all the Roman centers in North Africa. The ruins are one of the best examples of the grid plan that was used in Roman city planning. Excavation began by a French team in 1881. Laid bare the entire plan of the colony. Founded in the year 100 by Emperor Trajan as a settlement for army veterans, Thamugadi was sited in rich farmland. The settlement prospered through commerce and agriculture, and by the year 150 it had grown beyond its walls into the surrounding countryside. The Vandals sacked it in the 5th century. The site's plan resembles a military camp, but it was designated for civilian occupation. The walls enclose a square area, 1,165 feet per side, divided into quadrants by 2 colonnaded avenues and subdivided by a grid of streets. The crowding of temples, smaller baths, markets, offices, a theater, and houses within the walls forced many of the larger structures, especially the bigger baths, outside. Almost none of the sculptures exist today. The only remnants of the Roman architecture are the mosaic floors. This is a sweet picture. You can see their cargites. I'm not sure how you pronounce that, but babies there saying, "Hello, I'm here." Very cute. Let's read about the Hilalians. Despite their immense influence, the earliest Muslim Arabs in the Maghreb represented only a small urban elite whose detribalized members frequently married Berber women or took wives from their own narrow circle of Arab families, which were the products of generations of intermarriage with Berbers. From the 12th to the 14th centuries, however, Arabs of a distinctly different character, tribal people known as the Hilalians, arrived in the Maghreb in large numbers, dramatically altering the face and culture of the region. In the middle of the 11th century, the Fatimid Caliph in Cairo invited the Bani Hilal and the Bani Salim, Bedouin tribes originally from Hejaz and the Yemen, who for years had ravaged Upper Egypt, to migrate to the Maghreb and punish their rebellious vassals, the Zirids. The slow but continuous advance from these nomads across the region was like a swarm of locusts, impoverishing it, destroying towns, and turning farmland into steppes, as described by the 14th century Muslim historian Ibn Khaldun. The Hilalian impact on the central Maghreb was devastating in both demographic and economic terms. Over a long period of time, Arabs displaced Berber farmers from their land and converted it to pasturage. For the first time, the extensive use of Arabic spread to the countryside. Sedentary Berbers who sought protection from the Hilalians were gradually Arabized. Others, driven from their traditional lands, joined them as nomads or fled to the mountains. Ironically, the first entry of these Arabs into Morocco in the 12th century coincided with a political and religious revival among the Berber tribal confederations. Wow. Algeria during World War II. Looks like this building got bombed. Here we go. And this is Mohammed Ahmed bin Bella, one of the former rulers of Algeria. This guy's casting his vote with help from his little one. And this is pretty cool. It's a photograph of Algiers, I believe, during the Algerian War of Independence between 1954 and 1962. It's not a very old photograph, but it's still like an old photograph. Former Algerian President Lamine Zeroual. Here is the former FLN building by this beautiful fountain. So this is the box we're going to skip about Bouteflika because it's very much out of date. Leader of the Islamic Salvation Front. Some legal partner. We're skipping over the government chapter because it's all completely changed nowadays. Here's the big, beautiful Port of Algiers. And here are some people just hanging out. Looks like they've got some wares to sell here. Some little baskets and hoses of some kind. Working on the pipeline here in the desert. That must be exhausting hot. This also looks exhausting hot. They're carrying, what is it? It doesn't say, but it's some type of grassy thing, isn't it? Maybe some kind of hay. Air Algeria. Let's read about the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries. The Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, or OPEC, was created by Iran, Iraq, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, and Venezuela in Baghdad on September 14, 1960, to counter the oil price cuts of U.S. and European oil companies. Qatar joined in 1961, Indonesia and Libya 1962, Abu Dhabi 1967, which of course is now in the UAE, Algeria 1969, Nigeria 1971, and Ecuador and Gabon in 1973. In 1979, OPEC countries produced 66% of the world's petroleum, but by 2006 it was estimated that the OPEC members accounted for only 40% of world oil production and about 2/3 of the world's proven oil reserves. In its first decade, OPEC limited itself to preventing reductions in the price of oil. But by 1970, it had begun to press for rate increases. There was a fourfold increase in 1973 to 74 alone. Prices stabilized between 1974 and 1978, but increased by more than 100% during 1979. Demand slackened at the higher prices, and non-OPEC producers increased production. OPEC production quotas broke down during the 1980s, and there were disputes between nations seeking to curb production in hopes of driving prices up, and those increasing production to avoid disrupting the world economy or to sustain earnings in the face of dropping prices. OPEC's influence continued to decline in the 1990s. Ecuador withdrew from the organization on January 1st, 1993, and Gabon followed in 1995. With the newest edition of Angola in 2007, OPEC currently has 12 member nations. I believe that's still correct. Although Iraq remains a member of OPEC, its oil production has not been a part of any OPEC quota agreement since March 1998. OPEC's current influence over crude oil prices continues to decline. Granted that Algeria's heavy reliance on petroleum has made it extremely vulnerable to oil price fluctuations on the world market. It's a neat image here. The desert, little critters here, beautiful rocky scenery. Algeria's endangered animals. Critically endangered animals today include the adax, which is an antelope, and the Mediterranean monk seal. The monk seal lives in caves and among rocky outcrops along the coast of Algeria. Attempts to increase the seal production have been slow and difficult because the seals are sensitive to disturbances. Pregnant females who can give birth only to a single pup at a time have been known to abort when disturbed. Overfishing and pollution of the Algerian waters have also drastically reduced the number of these seals. Other endangered or vulnerable animals include the wild dog, the serval, which is a mid-sized wild African cat, the Mediterranean horseshoe bat, and the Eurasian otter. Beautiful ones there. Algeria's protected areas. Algeria's 11 national parks include coastal parks, mountain parks, Saharan parks, and one steppe park. Parc National del Kala in El Tarf, Parc National de Gouraya in Béjaïa, and Parc National de Taza in Jijel are Algeria's coastal parks. The parks of the mountain areas are Parc National de Tenier El Had in Tisimsilt. It's kind of a tongue twister. Parc National du Jujura in Tizi Ouzou and Bouria. Parc National de Creia in Blida. Parc National de Belezma in Batna. And Parc National de Tlemcen in Tlemcen. Is it Tlemcen or Tlemcen? I think I've heard both before, I'm not sure. Parc National de Jebel Aissa in Nama is the only park on the steppe. There are 2 parks of the Sahara. One, Parc National de Tassili, is in Elisi. The other, Parc National de la Hakar, is in Tamanrasset. 6 of these parks are also biosphere reserves. Parc National de Creia, Parc National del Kala, Parc National du Jujura, Parc National de Tassili, Parc National de Gouraya, and Parc National de Taza. I'm not putting on my French accent for Parc National. Anyway, nature reserves can be found at Oran and Mascara, Msila, Guelma, Sétif, and Oran. They are Réserve naturelle de la Makta, Réserve naturelle de Mergheb, Réserve naturelle de Benisala, Réserve naturelle de Babour, and Réserve naturelle Marine de Île Habiba, respectively. Some of Algeria's numerous wetland sites can be found at Skikta, Oran, Sétif, Nama, and Gordaya. The Barcelona Convention's specially protected areas of Mediterranean interest are Réserve Marine du Banc de Kabyle in Jijel and Réserve Naturelle Marine des Îles Habiba in Oran. That was like the hardest box to read. Some more beautiful faces here. And here you can see some Tuareg people, which you can tell by the blue color that they wear. And their turbans, head coverings. Look at this guy. This guy, you know, you just look at people and you know that they have fascinating stories and you can listen to them for hours on end. That's this guy. Let's read about the Moors. When the Arab armies swept across northern Africa in the 7th century, they found indigenous tribespeople called Berbers living in the northwestern corner of the continent. After the Arabs converted many of the Berbers to Islam early in the 8th century, the Berbers and the Arabs joined forces to conquer Spain. There they intermarried with the Spanish. Their descendants came to be called Moors, a term that is now archaic. There are no Moors today. Moors generally referred to people of mixed ancestry who lived along the coast of northwest Africa and Al-Andalus on the Iberian Peninsula, which contains today Spain and Portugal. The Moors reached the height of their power in Spain after the conquest of the Visigothic kingdoms in 711 and a period of great disorder. The highly cultured Arab Caliphate of Cordoba was formed. The caliphate lasted until 1031. Following its collapse, the Moors, who controlled northwestern Africa, crossed to Spain and took over. After the Battle of Las Naves de Tolosa in 1212, in which Alfonso VIII of Castile broke the Moorish hold over central Spain, the Moors still ruled the kingdom of Granada. Granada rose to a splendor rivaling that's a word I can never say, rivaling that of the former Caliphate of Cordoba. It was not until 1492 that this Moorish kingdom, weakened by internal discord, was shattered by the armies of Ferdinand and Isabella. The Moors were then expelled from Spain. We've got another very wise-looking person here, and some Berber women who kind of look like they're having a rough day. Oh, but there's some little sweets here. This one looks a little camera shy, and this one very cute. And these are some, they look like just like bros hanging out, is the only way I can describe it. Showy. Interesting. And here's some more Tuaregs. Looks like they've got a drum here. Let's read about Yves Saint Laurent. Born in Oran on August 1st, 1936, Yves Saint Laurent was a French fashion designer who furthered the trend for ready-to-wear clothes with his boutiques in Europe and the United States. The son of a successful French lawyer, he stayed in Algeria long enough to complete secondary school. Saint Laurent left for Paris to pursue a career designing women's clothes and costumes for the theater. After a Vogue magazine executive showed designer Christian Dior some of Saint Laurent's sketches in 1954, Dior hired him immediately as his assistant. Upon Dior's death in 1957, Saint Laurent was chosen as head designer for the Dior establishment at the age of 21. After induction into the French army and a subsequent nervous collapse, Saint Laurent opened his own Parisian fashion house in 1962. In 1966, he opened a series of boutiques that sold ready-to-wear designs. He also marketed perfume and accessories. YSL perfume smells great, by the way. He was responsible for popularizing pants for women of all occasions. In 1983, the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York held a retrospective covering 25 years of Saint Laurent's work. Saint Laurent is no longer active as a fashion designer, having retired in 1998, and he spent much of his time in his home in Marrakesh, Morocco. He has since passed away since this book came out. What's happening here? Oh, they're at an oasis, it says. Just relaxing, enjoying the shade. And these women are picking olives. Beautiful skirt there, I like that. Some nomads here around the incredible rock formations you can find in the desert in Algeria, and some soldiers during the War for Independence. Let's read about family planning. In the 20 years following independence, Algeria's population doubled. The average Algerian woman had between 7 and 9 children. With 3.2% population growth each year, Algeria was one of the world's faster-growing nations. There was concern that the country's economic growth would be hampered, as food, housing, and jobs were already limited. The need for Algeria to implement a family planning program slowly became evident. By the mid-1980s, the government's efforts began to bear fruit. There was an overwhelming demand for information on family planning in some areas, so much so that it outweighed the supply. It was estimated that approximately 35% of Algerian women of childbearing age were using contraceptives. Meanwhile, the government continued to promote the importance of family planning and the use of contraceptives. As of 2000, 50% of Algerian women used contraceptives. Today, Algeria's population growth rate has fallen to 1.22%. One of the few times that population growth rate falling is a good thing, right? Here's a Tuareg family. They have a really cute baby right there. Sweet slip there. If you can't tell, I think that children are like the most amazing things on the planet. They're so beautiful. What are they doing here? Algerian men make most major decisions involving money. It's like maybe they're at a bank or something. I'm not sure. Let's read about activists and women's rights under attack, which again is much better nowadays. Nabila Janine, an architect who led an organization called Tigri Ntentut, Cry of Women in Berber, was gunned down on February 15th, 1995 at the age of 35 by two men in a car as she walked to work. It is believed that Islamic militants are behind the murder. Janine, a well-known activist in Tizi Ouzou since she was a student, had helped to start a magazine called Voice of Women in 1990. In her writing, she defended Algerian women's right to participate in the civil and political life of their country. Despite escalating attacks on activists known for their opposition to the agenda of the armed Islamic militants, Janine remained an outspoken advocate for women's rights. Janine's organization, like so many of Algeria's other numerous small women's rights groups, has called for the elimination of discriminatory provisions from Algeria's family code, although no amendments have yet been made. I'm pretty sure there has been nowadays. The cancellation of parliamentary elections in 1992 led to fighting between the Algerian government and the armed Islamic opposition. Women were increasingly the targets of such violence. Women who worked outside the home were threatened and killed by Islamic militants. The headscarf came to be seen as a powerful symbol by those vying for power. Because of this, Algerian women were killed by Islamic militants for refusing to wear the veil, or by the militants' opponents for agreeing to wear the veil. Other women were threatened with death because of their own or their family members' identification with the government or the security forces. Algerian defenders of women's rights believed that the armed Islamic groups targeted women as important cultural symbols. By driving women from the streets, the Islamic militants demonstrated their power to impose the culture they envisioned for Algeria. Between 1995 and 1998, women's rights activists estimated some 5,000 women were assaulted. Even after the Civil War, Algerian women continue to face discrimination due to a lack of government legislation prohibiting violence against women. The government has also failed to investigate and bring to justice those who had committed violence against women during the 11-year Algerian conflict. Women are now more vocal in asserting their rights, as seen by the rise of small women's rights organizations. One such group is the National Women's Committee, an offshoot of the General Union of Algerian Workers, which now has 130,000 members campaigning against sexual harassment in the workplace. And like I said, much better story nowadays. It's kind of like a picture of what it was like for women in the 90s, right? Some examples of veiled women. You can see there, like they were talking about. They've got cute babies too. Look how cute. Let's see. Oh wow, traditional Berber dress here. I love these skirts. They're so beautiful. And an apartment building here. We're working hard in school and looking really cute. Man, these Algerian kids are adorable. time for prayer in this beautiful mosque. Here's some more friends hanging out, talking about the old days probably. Some more little sweets there. And let's see, human rights in an Islamic state. Why not? Let's read. The security of life and property. In the Prophet's address during his final pilgrimage, he said, "Your lives and properties are forbidden to one another till you meet your Lord on the day of resurrection." He also said, "One who kills a man under covenant, as in a non-Muslim citizen on a Muslim land, will not even smell the fragrance of paradise." The protection of honor. I'm sorry my chair's really squeaky tonight. I have no idea why. Anyway, the protection of honor. The Quran does not allow one's personal honor to be abused. O you who believe, do not let one set of people make fun of another set. Do not defame one another. Do not insult by using nicknames. Do not backbite or speak ill of one another. Sanctity and security of private life. The Quran guarantees privacy. Do not spy on one another and do not enter any houses unless you are sure of the occupant's consent. Security and personal freedom. Islam prohibits the imprisonment of any individual before his guilt has been proven before a public court. This means that the accused has the right to defend himself and to expect fair and impartial treatment from the court. Freedom of expression. Islam allows freedom of thought and expression, provided that it does not involve spreading that which is harmful to individuals and the society at large. For example, the use of abusive or offensive language in the name of criticism is not allowed. In the days of the Prophet, Muslims used to ask him about certain matters. If he had received no revelation on that particular issue, they were free to express their personal opinions. Freedom of association. The formation of associations, parties, and organizations is allowed on the understanding that they abide by certain general rules. Freedom of conscience and conviction. The Quran states there should be no coercion in the matter of faith. Totalitarian societies throughout the ages have tried to deprive individuals of their freedom by subordinating them to state authority. Islam forbids such practice. Along with freedom of conviction and freedom of conscience, Islam guarantees the individual that his religious sentiments will be given due respect and nothing will be said or done that may encroach upon this right. And the right to basic necessities of life. Islam recognizes the right of the needy to demand help from those who are more fortunate, and in their wealth there is acknowledged right for the needy and the destitute. A big part of Islam is helping the needy and the poor. Some more prayers here. Ooh, let's read about the marabouts. This is an interesting topic. Persons who were remarkable in one way or another and consequently were believed to have or special blessedness of grace were called marabouts. This special status could be acquired by temporal leaders who commanded the respect of their followers, performed acts of charity, and had a reputation for justness, or by spiritual leaders who had studied in Quranic schools, had admirable personal qualities, and could perform miracles. Marabout status could also be acquired by having baraka bestowed by a marabout or by dying heroically. Marabouts or North African holy men, frequently described by English language writers as saints. They had no place in pristine Islam and were looked on with disfavor by the Orthodox. Brotherhoods of disciples frequently formed around particular marabouts, especially those who preached an original tariqa, a mystical or devotional way. Each founder, an obvious professor of great baraka, ruled an order of adepts who were ordinarily organized hierarchically. Before the 20th century, marabouts and their followers played significant political and moral roles, especially in Western Algeria. In the mid-1980s, several of the marabout brotherhoods were still alive, although their membership had declined and some had been abolished by government decree. Nonetheless, veneration of marabouts and other glorified leaders was common throughout the Maghreb, and some observers saw marabout leaders as having regained some influence in rural areas after Algeria gained independence. Shrines were established at the place of death of a leader or a marabout, or some place associated with an event in his life, and every village, city, or area of a city has its patron saint or saints who epitomized Muslim virtues and whose saintliness had been transformed into magical baraka at a special shrine. The influence of marabouts and brotherhoods have since declined, and none of the post-independence regimes have had any interest in their revival because they represent fragmentation and disunity. Many Algerians also accept the presence of mysterious powers and invisible beings. These might be benevolent or malevolent, and must, as appropriate, be greeted, honored, propitiated, whatever that word, or avoided. Particularly in the countryside, Islam was mixed with a variety of pre-Islamic beliefs and practices. These include magic, various agricultural rites, and fear of the evil eye, and appears a shrine in Timimun, which is a really cool looking building. Saint Augustine of Hippo. Saint Augustine was one of the foremost philosopher-theologians of early Christianity, and while serving as Bishop of Hippo Regius, which is in northern Annaba, he was the leading figure in the Church of North Africa. He had a profound influence on the development of Western thought and culture, and more than any other person shaped the themes and defined the problems that have characterized the Western tradition of Christian theology. These sentences are so long. Among his many writings, considered classics, the two most celebrated are his semi-autobiographical Confessions and City of God, a Christian vision of history. Augustine was born in Tagaste, which is modern Souk Aras, a small town in the Roman province of Numidia. The first part of Augustine's life can be seen as a series of attempts to reconcile his Christian faith with his Roman culture. His mother, Saint Monica, a Christian Berber, raised him as a Christian. He received a classical education that schooled him in Latin literature. As a student in Carthage, he encountered the classical idea of philosophy's search for truth and was fired with enthusiasm for the philosophic life. Unable to give up Christianity altogether, however, he adopted Manichaeism, a Christian heresy claiming to provide a radical Christianity on the basis of purified text of Scripture. Trained at Carthage in rhetoric, he became a teacher of rhetoric in Carthage, Rome, and finally Milan. In Milan, he discovered, through a chance reading of some books of Neoplatonism, a form of philosophy that seemed compatible with Christian belief. At the same time, he found that he was finally able to give up the ambitions for public success that had previously prevented him from embracing the philosophic life. In 386, Augustine underwent religious conversion. He retired from his public position and received baptism from Ambrose, the bishop of Milan. With a small group of friends, he returned to North Africa and in Thagaste established a religious community dedicated to the intellectual quest for God. Augustine's ordination, unexpectedly forced upon him by popular acclamation during a visit to Hippo in 391, brought about a fundamental change in his life and thought. He eventually succeeded in bringing together the philosophic Christianity of his youth and the popular Christianity of his congregation in Hippo. His subsequent career as priest and bishop was to be dominated by controversy and debate. Especially important were his struggles with the Donatists and with Pelagianism. In both of these controversies, Augustine opposed forces that set some Christians apart from others on grounds of religious exclusivism or moral worth. I've never heard of like half of these words. I'm not a Christian, and especially not an expert on ancient Christianity, so I have no idea what some of those words meant. An ancient Christian shrine here looks like a little corner where you pray. And a Catholic church in Orion. Beautiful view. Some newspapers here. You can see lots of French, isn't it? And some Arabic. And a street sign here. Kind of a cool picture. Though this one's even better. The Bank of Agriculture and Rural Development, and this guy's showing up on his camel. These guys are having a chat. Militants in 1980 vigorously opposed Arabization. Okay. I guess they wanted more traditional script. I'm not sure. Names. Man, these boxes, the little boxes in this book are not little, are they? Let's see what this one's about. Names. For those familiar with the European tradition of using a first name, an optional middle name, and a last name, names in the Arab world can seem perplexing, not least because they can run to enormous length. However, there is a logical structure to the Arab naming convention that, once seen, makes it simple to decipher a person's recent ancestry. Suppose a man's name is Ali bin Ahmed bin Salah al-Fulani. He is called Ali by his friends and family. His family name is al-Fulani. Bin means son of, as does Ibn. So bin Ahmed bin Salah means that he is the son of Ahmed, who is in turn the son of Salah. Many Arabs can give their paternal ancestors as names for at least 5 or 6 generations, if not more. It's kind of a long name, though. What about women's names? Ali's sister is named Nura bint Ahmed bin Salah al-Fulani. Bint means daughter of. Thus her name means Nura, the daughter of Ahmed, who is the son of Salah. So we have her given name, her father's name, her grandfather's name, and the family name. It is interesting to note that when an Arab woman marries, she does not change her name. When the above-mentioned Nura marries, her name remains exactly the same. Her children, however, take their father's name. Arab names sometimes also indicate tribal affiliation and the village or region of origin. For example, a man named Abd al-Rahman ibn Qasim ibn Muhammad al-Bayad would be recognized as the son of Qasim, the grandson of Muhammad, and a native of the town of al-Bayad. The man would be addressed as Mr., or his title, if any, Abd al-Rahman. In spoken Arabic, names are leaded, so that in this instance the name would be pronounced as if it were spelled Abdur Rahman. In many instances, the Western press spells such names as Abdul or Abdul Rahman, implying incorrectly that the man's first name is Abdul and his last name Rahman. Many Arabic names, such as the one in this example, are designations of the attributes of God. Abd al means servant of, and Rahman means merciful. Thus the name literally means the servant of the merciful God. Doing some weaving here, and lots of pottery for sale. Rye musicians under attack. During the Civil War, rye music was accused of spreading corrupt Western values among the young, who in Algeria represented a good 75% of the population. Thus, more or less all rye stars are condemned to death by Islamic fundamentalists. Some militant religious leaders called for a fatwa, an order for all Muslims to kill a particular person or on singers they disliked. What the terrorists want to show, said Sheb Khalid, the recognized king of rye, is that you can continue to sing rye only abroad or in hiding. You can expect only the worst from people who fight to spread their own unhappiness to everyone. That's so true. Sheb Khalid has since lived in self-imposed exile in Paris. Rye musicians continued to be controversial, lacing their lyrics with social and political criticism. I know rye music is still huge in Algeria. Here's Albert Camus, who wrote The Stranger. Tahir Joud, killed at age 39, was another great loss to Algerian literature. Great mustache. The Devil in the Feminine Case. Director Hafsa Zinai Kudil. Hafsa Zinai Kudil, a tense, chain-smoking woman, got her idea for a movie from a true story reported in 1990. A man had his wife beaten up by exorcists because she refused to wear the veil. Her attackers were brought to justice but given only token sentences. The Devil in the Feminine Case describes an urban couple whose eldest son is won over to the cause of Islamic fundamentalism. His father also espouses the cause. The two become obsessed with the idea of getting the mother to wear the veil. When she refuses, they declare that she is possessed by the devil and hire 3 men to exorcise her. The torture session ends with the woman rushed to the hospital. She is handicapped for life and her husband goes out of his mind. I made the film in an atmosphere of terror, says Kudil. She had no police protection, and throughout the filming, crew members took turns to look out for signs of trouble. The film was not distributed in Algeria. The Devil in the Feminine Case was shown, however, at the 1994 Amiens Festival and the 1995 International Women's Film Festival. Kudil is also the author of 4 novels, the first being the autobiographical The End of a Dream in 1984. Her most recent novel, The Discomposed Past, published in 1992, denounces the status of women in Algeria. Ooh, this looks like a nice relaxing day by the water. And let's see, just hanging out. It kind of seems what a lot of people do, is they just hang out like these guys. They're kind of staring at the cameraman like, why are you taking our picture? We're just hanging out. Difficult time for women in sports. In 1991, Hasiba Boumerka became the first African woman to win a gold medal at the World Track and Field Championships when she won the 1500-meter run. A year later in Barcelona, she became Algeria's first Olympic champion, winning the 1500-meter run in 3 minutes, 55.3 seconds. Whether her achievements instill pride or fury in her countrymen depends, she said, on whom one asks. In general, I get positive reactions in Algeria because I'm a symbol of my country. But like every symbol, there are some who like me and some who don't. Every time she runs in shorts, she incurs the wrath of Muslim fundamentalists, who have spat on her, pelted her with rocks, and called her blasphemous for running with naked legs in front of thousands of men. Although she lives abroad 9 months out of the year, she returns to Algeria regularly to try to be a role model for girls there. Some school sports programs similar to the one that spawned her career have been discontinued. The situation is difficult in Algeria, especially for women, Bulmerka said. But it's important to have courage and set an example by training there, so I do. It'll never be easy for women in Algeria. But my gold medal wasn't simply a victory for the moment. It was a victory for the future. It gave a glimpse of what women could do in Algeria. Another Algerian woman to excel in track and field is Nouria Mira Benita. She won the gold medal at the 2000 Summer Olympics in Sydney for her 1500-meter run. That same year, she won the silver medal for the 800-meter race and the gold for the 1500-meter race at the African Championships. In 1999, at the All-Africa Games in Johannesburg, she won the silver in both the 800-meter and the 1500-meter events. Although its promotion of women in sports is far from ideal, Algeria has taken small steps in encouraging women's participation. The government has established the National Association for the Promotion and Development of Women's Sports and a women's football club, Kabash FC, based in Algiers. For the first time in Algerian history, a women's national championship for football was played in front of 80,000 fans in 1999. This looks like an interesting ceremony, festival here. And it says this is for a horse festival. Cool. Ooh, look at these guys. They are dressed and ready for the event. Right? And this is on Eid al-Fitr. They're out at the fairgrounds enjoying the day. A camel racer here. Isn't that cool? We're going to skip the list of public holidays. We've got lots of spices, and it looks like beans, greens, lots of things for sale. Man, these pages won't turn. But that's okay, they make good sounds. Lots of boxes. Oh, that's a recipe. We're not going to read a couscous recipe, but let's read about eating etiquette. Algerians often eat with their fingers. Food is traditionally eaten with the thumb, the forefinger, and the middle finger on the right hand. The left hand is never used for eating, as it is the hand that Muslims use for ablutions, and is therefore considered unclean. Using 4 or 5 fingers to eat is considered to be overstepping the bounds of good taste, as it is seen as a sign of greed. Don't reach in like that. A bowl of water is usually offered to wash the hands before and after a meal is eaten. In a middle-class Algerian family, a servant or a young family member will offer a bowl of perfumed water around the table. That's nice. Algerians are particular about hospitality and will ensure that their guests eat well. To show that one is done with eating, a small portion of food is left on the plate. A plate that is left empty is a signal that seconds are needed. We're roasting some lamb there. And let's finish off this book by reading about figs. I need to adjust my foot's asleep. This is a long video, but an interesting one, right? Let's read about figs. Figs comprise a large genus, Ficus, of deciduous and evergreen tropical and subtropical trees, shrubs, and vines belonging to the mulberry family, because it is Ficus. Commercially, the most important fig is Ficus carica, tree that produces the edible fig fruit. Among the most ancient cultivated fruit trees, the fig is indigenous to the eastern Mediterranean and the southwest region of Asia, where its culmination probably began. It is now grown in warm, semi-arid areas throughout the world. A fruit-bearing fig ranges from a bush like 3 feet to a moderately tall tree that may grow up to 39 feet in height. It is characterized by dark green, deeply lobed leaves. The fig bears no visible flowers. Its flowers are borne within a round, fleshy structure, the syconium, which matures into the edible fig. The common fig bears only female flowers but develops the fruits without pollination. Varieties of the Smyrna type also bear only female flowers, but to produce fruit, they must be pollinated artificially. Fig trees are propagated through rooted cuttings taken from the wood of older trees. They grow best in moderately dry areas that have no rain during the period of fruit maturation. During this period, humidity might hinder the process of fruit drying, much of which occurs on the tree. The partially dried fruit drops to the ground, where it is gathered and the drying process completed. Some fruit may be picked from the tree before it dries and eaten as fresh fruit. Just check and make sure that is the end. Yeah, it's just recipes and things at the end. So that is it for tonight. If you've managed to make it this far without falling asleep, leave a comment down below. Let me know what you think. And if you liked this kind of video, do consider subscribing because I make videos like this all the time. Thank you so much for watching. I hope that you found this video relaxing and educational, and I hope that you have a very good